have often stopped their working career. And I'm talking mostly about women in my generation, not yours, which is great. But they've stopped their career to take care of their kids. And then when a life transition happens, their last kid goes to college, or their last kid leaves the house, or they get divorced, or anything like that, they are often without a way to make real income. Their opportunities boil down to working retail a lot of times, or working for a family member. But what Airbnb allows them to do, without any prerequisites, you don't have to go to college, you don't have to get some sort of certificate of proficiency. It allows them to monetize what is often their greatest asset, and that's their home. And what it does for women is it gives them a sense of accomplishment, just like this other woman. It gives them often their sole income that goes just to them. Their sole income in decades, money that is theirs exclusively. And I've seen this play out just literally hundreds of times. And I want women to be inspired by other women's stories.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You're looking good today. I like the shirt that you got on.
I don't know if you can see it. There you go. Be proud.
Yeah, lovely. Yes, indeed. How's your day going?
Good. Met with an attorney because I'm, starting a property management company. So I got those contracts. And, we're having a problem in Nashville with criminals targeting Airbnbs. And so had a great phone call I've been trying to do this for a year and a half, with the police to come up with like some partnership to help us kind of make guests aware, to figure out what we can do as owners to make our properties more safe, and maybe help guests understand what they can do, not to kind of advertise that they are an Airbnb. Like we have a lot of bachelorette parties who make tons of noise coming in and out of the properties, and that advertises to kind of criminals that like we're gone, So
yeah, definitely got to be smarter in preventing against having sort of an open door to bad behavior. And so there is an ownership on the guest part as well. So it's great that you guys.
Yeah, sure. And it's, I describe it as a problem of mom's not there.
Mm.
Like the problems are often when it's just like unrelated, guests, like for a bachelorette party, like we don't really have those problems when it's a family unit because somebody's saying, lock the door, So like it's that kind of problem. So anyway, so I'm glad that that at least I have their attention now, because detectives were just telling the owners that are telling the guests who had been burglarized, oh, the maids are selling their codes. Well, that's not what happens at all, because we can tell on the door lock what number accesses the door, accesses that lock. And it's not maids selling the numbers. It's, a lot of times people leaving the doors unlocked.
You know what? I find that a lot of times the examples that are used in talking about some of the negative qualities or aspects of Airbnb are outliers. They're red areas that just kind of stick up, and everyone just attaches to those examples, and it just kind of becomes this thing that grows into more than it actually was. And in this instance, when it comes to operating a successful business and protecting your investment, protecting your guests and servicing them, there are a lot of redundancies that we can have in place. The smart locks are incredible, with you being able to see who was coming and who was going. But on top of that, you can have the video doorbell to monitor the entryway, or the external cameras for like the floodlights or what have you.
Right.
And so those things all play a role in being able to, prove what is and is not taking place at the property.
Well, what we've gone a step further too, and what we do is on our doors, the outside doors, is we get commercial hinges that
Yeah.
close the door. And then a lot of the locks, if you look in the management of the locks, it will say lock the door after 4 minutes.
Yes,
And
I love
so-
that auto locking feature. It's awesome.
Yeah. And so that takes away the responsibility of the guest to remember, the guest who's often excited, and so that closes the door and locks the door. So the guest doesn't even have to think about it a lot of times. And it protects the guest, and it protects me, protects my investment, protects, everything. So yeah, that's what I recommend now.
That's awesome. So Barb, let's rewind a little bit. I know that you have had quite a bit of experience in the hospitality business, and you started Airbnb back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
Early
right?
2018, I got my permit.
Yeah. Can you talk about what led you to that?
Well, before 2018, we bought this house in very, very late 2017. But before that, I did couch surfing. Do you know what couch surfing is? Right? And
More and more.
and I live in the South, and I should start off by saying pretty early on, although you'll recognize this, if you talk to me enough, I'm a liberal. I believe in a lot of, social, I'm a financial conservative, but socially I'm very liberal. And I opened my house to couch surfing because I was very concerned about what people thought about people in the South, about what the world thought about people in the South, about what the rest of America thought. And I was concerned about, perceptions. And I wanted to open my house to say, look, Americans aren't all like these people who think the rest of the world is awful, or, don't like people who aren't the same color, or the same, religion or anything else as them. And so I had a wonderful time with couch surfing. I didn't do it myself because my husband snores like crazy, and I would never go and do that to someone. But opened my house to tons of people and to tons of musicians, and it was a wonderful experience. And so when we moved to Nashville, we looked for a house that had like a separate apartment that that was the same, so that we could make money on it, and that we could afford a better house in a bigger house in a better neighborhood, and that's what we did. So and so I stopped couch surfing and started sort of making money off what I thought was a wonderful thing. And that's kind of a lesson for us all, take what you love and find a way to monetize it, right? So and it provides financial security for ourselves. It provides financial security for our retirement, and it provides financial security for generations to come. What I will leave my money to my children, or to causes that I believe in. So that's how I started. And I got really into it really quickly, because after less than a year, Nashville is really, really strict on short-term rental permits. They decided to reinterpret a law that I had gotten my permit under and take away my permit. And so I had no choice. I couldn't afford the house without that rental income. And I'm not a political person. Before this, I was kind of a person who said, okay, what will be, what, it's okay. That turned me into a political person, because it was taking away my property rights, my right to make a living, which, I obtained that permit legally. And we sued Nashville. Nashville acted poorly in that lawsuit, and the judge found them in contempt of court. The first time in all of Tennessee's history, maybe 260 years at that point, that a municipality had been found in contempt of court. And that basically means Nashville knew the law and totally ignored it. Knew the law and totally ignored it, which, I'm sure happens a whole lot, but this was the first time it happened in the short-term rental industry in Nashville.
Okay.
So that propelled me into activism. And eventually I became president of the Nashville Area Short-Term Rental Association because of that. And so we advocate for legal responsible hosting. And that means not bothering your neighbors. We believe strongly in neighborhoods. We believe in community. But we also believe that people have the right to do what they want within limits with their own property. But they have to be responsible, to their neighborhood, responsible to their guests, responsible to their communities. And so that's what I've been doing the last couple of years. And also at the same time, I became a community leader for Airbnb in Nashville, and then one of the original Ask a Superhost ambassadors. So
yeah, and that is actually how we met. We met at the Superhost Ambassador Summit in Atlanta, and I was just so intrigued by all that you shared because you are truly a living legend when it comes to the short-term rental space.
I want to say though that people say that about me. Oh, she sued Nashville. You're like I'm some Braveheart. No, I had to sue Nashville or else sell my house. I was pushed into that position. I was scared. I turn red when I talk to people if I'm nervous. I start stuttering, or at least I did then. But that experience pushed me into finding resources within myself that I didn't know that I had. And I think I became a more aware person, a more, involved in the community person. I found that I had resources and talents that I didn't know that I had.
I love that. And that's a beautiful thing. Airbnb has been able to provide so many hosts like yourself, like myself. And, being the tip of the spear can be truly exhausting and incredibly awful. I'm sure as you were going through this process, you didn't know what the outcome would be, but you knew what the result would be for your family and your financial situation if your business wasn't able to sustain and continue. And, there's nothing more American. It says pursuit of life, liberty, and property. Those are the three fundamental foundational principles to this country. And to, have a state government, a municipal government in the South, which is typically viewed in the investing world as being more liberal in terms of tenancy laws and in terms of supporting property owners, to have the fight that you had and have them act in the way that they did, and for you to respond, that's a beautiful thing, for you to not back down.
Well, it's a really convoluted thing though, because Nashville is a Democratic city. We're Democrats, but the state is overwhelmingly a Republican. And so they believe in strong property rights, which I do too. And they also have a law that grandfathers you in. So the cities, the municipalities can't change the law and then scoot you out. You operate at when you got your permit, those laws, rather than, what laws come after. So it's kind of a unique situation. But I learned a whole lot about the Constitution and the legal world and everything else. It was definitely a learning experience and definitely something I was propelled into and didn't seek out, and I have to say through that experience, I had a little bit, just a small bit of what kind of social media can do to you, though, if people disagree with you. Mm-hmm. And people came to my door, like angry people knocking on the door to yell at me because I filed suit against Nashville. The local, and then later on when I testified before the Tennessee legislature, muckraking person on the news, did a profile of me that was 100% not correct. Like that I was trying to disrupt neighborhoods and if you've talked to me for any amount of time, that that's not me, that's not me, that I believe in people connecting with each other. I believe in knowing the person next door. I believe in helping the person next door. I do the laundry for like the homeless shelter. That's who I am. I'm not a person who says, oh, capitalism at all costs. I'm not that person, but I am the person who says you're responsible for your own success in a lot of ways. And by doing that legally, and that people can't take away those rights from you, that they have no right to take away your rights, and a government doesn't have a right to take away your rights. So, that was a hard time. But humans are resilient. We are made to survive. We are made to survive and to scar over so that we can go on and do better. And anytime, anyone goes through this, and it's really hard to do. It's really hard to reach down and say, what have I learned from this? And how can I improve my life? And in the big scope of things, it was a small thing that Nashville did. But I think it's a good lesson overall, at least it was for me.
That's incredible. And I think it's a lesson for all superhosts, for all hosts, for all prospective hosts, because as we know, politics is the game of picking winners and losers, quite frankly. And, in our society, we do have to balance the needs of all, whether that be guests, whether that be hosts, whether that be the communities that we serve. And you highlighted some very key factors in what it means to be a good steward of the community that you serve and exist and operate in. And that awareness is essential to being able to maintain the ability to do business. And, our properties are in residential communities, and they are not our own properties as far as I'm concerned. All the guests that stay at our properties are related family members to members of the community that we have personal relationships with, that we meet and greet all the time and inquire how the recent graduate is doing at the new university up the street, or how the procedure went for the young child that was flown into the specialized medical hospital that we have here, or how Aunt Bertha is recovering from the back surgery that she had, and on and on and on. These details really matter because they make you a part of the community, and you can disassociate yourself from the negative headlines that always seem to surround the business that we do. I feel like, what's the saying? A lie can make it around the world faster than the truth can get out of bed and put on its pants.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think politicians, it's easy, like short-term rentals are low-hanging fruit for them.
Oh my, say it again.
Yeah. Short-term rentals are low-hanging fruit for politicians. And we are easy to, point a finger at. And the truth is that most of us are small businesses. And what Airbnb allows us to do is to monetize our assets, monetize what is often our largest asset, which is our home.
And even oftentimes our largest liability, if we are not thinking and investing framework that can help us to be able to support our families. A lot of times people go after the white picket fence and the ideal dream home, and that ends up becoming what typically is 30 to 40% of your income. So a lot of us have come to this as a way to put money back in our own pockets and redistribute it in our communities.
Right. And so we're demonized a lot. though. We're like, oh, like you said before, one incident. Um, you know, everybody talks about that one party that was held literally 5 years ago, or 4 years ago, in Nashville, where, a lot through social media, lots of people showed up, It was one of those things where like they paid for to get into the party, and it was awful. Yes, it was awful. But that is probably 0.001% of all of, the reservations, all of the bookings. And people don't realize how much, and I say Airbnb because my experience is mostly with Airbnb. VRBO doesn't seem to reach out the way that Airbnb does. So my experience has mostly been with Airbnb. But Airbnb is great at establishing and helping to promote communities. There's a community of Airbnb hosts in each city, and the community means connection. And so they're great at helping like hosts and guests connect. My favorite ambassador story, absolute favorite ambassador story, was when I was a new ambassador, and it was probably one of my first people that I helped. And it was during COVID, right after COVID had started. And this woman who was 82 years old and lived in like North Carolina, and she had like a little condo that they had retired to that had one of the rooms, which had been her husband's office, could be separated, a room and a bathroom. And her husband went into the hospital over Christmas with COVID. She never saw him again. Never could see. I mean, like, it's a story that was repeated, obviously, a bunch of times in America during that time. And so she got the idea during her grief that she would rent out that room. And she painted it, 82 years old, painted the room, redid it, pulled in some beds, right? And I'm her ambassador, and I'm helping her. And I spent more time with her than anyone else, because she's asking me questions like, should I put the golf picture up there, or should I put this beach picture up there? So she gets her first guest, and she calls me, and she is so excited. And I kept in touch with her. She bakes bread for every guest. She meets them. She sometimes invites them into her side of the apartment for dinner or lunch, or, she is so involved. And this has become her life now, because it took her away from the sadness and the grief of her old life and gave her a new mission. And I told my community manager about this. I don't know if you know Colin. And he kind of pushed it up the scale. And Catherine Powell, who is number 3 in Airbnb, decided to call her. Well, Catherine Powell is so high up that like Catherine's assistant, like had to set up like the call to the assistant and then the call to right. So she talks to Catherine Powell for like an hour and a half. So
that's amazing.
And she asks Catherine Powell, which I think is so wonderful. It says so much about Airbnb. Well, do you think I should put up the beach picture or the golf picture? And she tells me, yeah, I asked her and she agreed with you. It's the beach picture. And Airbnb, because it gave her a platform to connect to all these other people and a purpose. Help these people have a good vacation. Help them show them what her little community was about. And it changed her life, And so I think I told you before, I haven't done it yet, but I am starting a podcast called Women of Airbnb, because I have heard that story in various forms again and again and again, because women have often been shut out, just like people of color, um, to opportunities to be able to advance themselves, educational, job, entrepreneurial. And women have often stopped their working career, and I'm talking mostly about women in my generation, not yours, which is great. But they've stopped their career to take care of their kids. And then when a life transition happens, their last kid goes to college, or, their last kid leaves the house, or they get divorced, or anything like that. They are often without a way to make real income. Like their opportunities boil down to working retail a lot of times, or working for a family member. But what Airbnb allows them to do without any prerequisites, you don't have to go to college. You don't have to get, some sort of certificate of proficiency. It allows them to monetize what is often their greatest asset, and that's their home. And what it does for women is it gives them a sense of accomplishment, just like this other woman. It gives them often their sole income, like income that goes just to them. Their sole income in like decades, money that is theirs exclusively. And I've seen this play out just literally hundreds of times. And I want women to be inspired by other women's stories.
That's incredible. I don't mean to be a copycat here, but I have a somewhat similar story of a mentee through the ambassador program who did have to deal with the passing of their spouse and lived in Virginia and were considering, opening their home to have a financial benefit in the wake of the loss that they had experienced. And my mentee's experience was not one that was as beautiful as yours. But the fact that she tried, that she put herself out there, that she did something different, and that she was able to, through Airbnb Superhost Ambassador Program, have someone to support them along that process, have someone to, speak with and to confide in. I think that while it may not have turned out the way I hoped with, continued participation in the business, just that simple, opening herself up and sharing herself with the world again in the face of the loss that she experienced, I think that will pay dividends through her personal development moving forward. And I'm really happy to have been able to play a part in that.
Yeah. And oftentimes what mentees need, or what helps them, I think, it's not just the technical information, but I say, people say, I'm scared. Of course you're scared. You're doing something new. But guess what? We are all scared. If you're not scared, you're probably a narcissist and you have a full host of other problems that we won't talk about. But yeah, you're supposed to be scared when you're doing something new. That prevents you from like stepping off the ledge into the abyss, So we humans are supposed to be scared when we see opportunities, new opportunities, and take advantage of them. It moderates, what could be like aberrant behavior. So we're all scared and it's okay, but what happens is you get through that experience and you get more knowledge, and you get, your talent and your skill set evolves, and you get better at it, and you stop being scared.
Yeah. I ironically had a conversation with a doctor today, and we were talking about just the human connection and how it's a necessity to life, really. He was giving me information on, some studies that have been done on, I forget the exact word, but individuals that live beyond the age of 100, and how there are clusters all around the world, and how in studying these individuals, people try to first look at their diet. Well, their diets are all completely different. People try to look at their activity levels. Well, yet again, their activity levels are very different. And they try to look at, were they consuming alcohol versus smoking? There was a slew of, there was yes and no for both. And so the takeaway was the differentiating factor between those individuals and those populations that live beyond the age of 100 all around the world was the community that they had, was the connectivity that they had, right? These were people that were, maybe living in the mountains and off the beaten path place, or even living in large major urban areas. But the one thing that they all shared in common was the connection that they had with their community. And I know Brian talks about it all the time, that his goal for Airbnb is to be a network that links humanity together. And the stories that you've shared and the experiences that I've had, that our mentees have had, that is the truth. And so when I look to, pivoting back to some policy, when I look to some of the policy decisions that are being made, like everyone's talking about the New York legislation that just went through that took about 15,000 homeowners out of the short-term rental space, in an area where, people are spending 35% of their monthly income on supporting themselves in their cost of living in the home. These legislative moves are taking away the income that is not only benefiting the host, but it's also benefiting the community, because those dollars get turned over into grocery stores, into different products that the community sells. And so, Airbnb has had its most profitable quarter to date, and, taking in, I believe, $8.4 billion in revenue. But that is something that I see being under threat, considering the legislative environment, the regulatory environment, not only at a local level, municipally, or the state level, but even internationally. There are different countries like Singapore, Italy, that have different bans proposed. And so I just want to know, Barb, what your thoughts are for prospective hosts on how they can, navigate this climate, and current hosts on how they can participate in advocacy for us to continue to do what we do so well, which is make connections.
Well, I think one of the things they can do is join groups like their local advocacy organization, like NASTRA. Almost every city has one, so join it so that your voices can be magnified. And I think when we talk about when politicians talk about limiting short-term rentals, they keep on saying that it takes rental units out of the inventory for local residents, and that it increases, rental rates. All the studies that have been done say that that's not true. It's not true. And what I think doesn't get talked about enough is that, and please understand, I'm in the hotel world too. So I don't demonize the hotel world. I've got a foot in both worlds. So, but I know that what hotel owners do is, they get together and they do things, to lobby against short-term rentals, because it hurts their bottom line. I mean, it definitely hurts their bottom line. But if you think about where hotels are, they're generally clustered in commercial areas, right? So if a tourist stays in a hotel, they're going to spend their money in the hotel. They're going to spend their money, at the tourist attraction. If a guest stays at a place that, is around the corner from a local cafe, or is down the street, from a small mom and pop, a lot of their money is going to be spent there, within our neighborhoods. It's not going to just all be spent at the, at the large hotel and at the tourist attraction. A lot of their money is going to be spent right around where they're staying. So I think because it's so hard to determine what those numbers are, I don't think we talk about that enough. That Airbnbs, because they're located in neighborhoods, support those businesses in those neighborhoods. I mean, we can't quantify it well enough to talk about it, but we have quantified whether Airbnb hurts the rental market, and it does not.
Like you said, it's just the low-hanging fruit. I mean, the housing affordability crisis has been exacerbated to date by the high interest rates that we have had to endure and will continue to endure because of the inflation situation that we have, not only domestically, but globally. And so, you know, it's easy to just point the finger at the new disrupting thing, and unfortunately, I I wonder if we will really turn to the root causes, like providing people with better, jobs to work and sustain themselves.
Oh, you
Labor costs, material costs.
are so talking my language because, I often say that instead of politicians kind of saying, okay, we need to do something about the transportation infrastructure or the educational system or the financial markets, which prevent lower cost housing from getting built. We won't talk about those things, these big systemic issues. What we'll do, though, is take away a homeowner's right to have someone stay with them in their property, or somebody stay in their property while they're on vacation, or while they're in Nashville. What happens a lot is musicians on tour, right? So they have, these guitarists have, these staff musicians have houses, and then they want to short-term rental them while they're on tour. And I think that's why in Nashville, like, it grew so quickly. But like, we prohibit the little guy from making money and being successful, where we're not going after these big players or changing policy so that we all have access to the same playing field. Like, we all have access to educational opportunities and transportation, solutions. We just try to pull short-term rental rights because it's easy. It's easy to do.
So I want to bring us full circle, Barb. In the beginning, you mentioned how you are socially progressive and you're wanting to, or you got into the short-term rental space because you wanted to be the change you wish to see in the world, and disassociate some of the tropes that are connected with, being an individual from the South. And you wanted to say, there's so much more that we have to offer here. And so I just want to speak to listeners, viewers, and say, there's so much more that you have to offer, that we have to offer, but the legislatures, the policymakers, they don't know that, because as we've clearly seen, the easy path is what will be chosen. And so our path is not going to be the one of least resistance. We have to continue to resist and, do so in a way that highlights the value that we add to the communities that we're a part of, and the members that we serve, be it hosts, be it mentees that we are training on how to, live a financially independent lifestyle through utilizing the assets and resources that they have, be it their home, be it their, airboats, with all the different things, the experiences that they offer, houseboats, there's so much that we have to offer, and advocacy is without a doubt sorely needed. And I would just, hope this serves as a call to action for any of those out there.
Well, I just want to clarify one thing. I'm not from the South. So I grew up in Philadelphia.
Go Birds, baby. You see that W?
I grew up in South Philly, and I went to Penn.
Yeah.
And so Reed, Reed. Yeah, Reed. So Reed and I often I have homesickness a lot, and so I talk to Reed when I'm homesick. But yeah, so I miss Philadelphia. Haven't lived there forever, but
earlier this summer, and I was doing a 15-day fast. It was like the worst possible time to be there, and all the nostalgia was hitting me. I was in the old neighborhoods. I wanted to get a cannoli here. I wanted to get a cheesesteak there. I wanted to, my sister was making jambalaya, and I had to go to dance recitals, graduation parties, and I was just inundated and surrounded by love and good food. There was even an African American History Festival that was going on downtown. They were just cooking everything. But I remained resilient and stuck to me.
You have much more control in the face of a cheesesteak than I do, because my husband and I got married. we lived on Bainbridge Street, which is, one block around from South Street, and Jim's cheesesteak.
Jim's my favorite.
Yes, my favorite too. Yeah. And it recently burned down. Did you know that?
Oh my. No.
Yes, I know. It recently burned down. I found out, and I was like, "What?" And I was almost like a pet had died.
Yeah.
And they are rebuilding it exactly the same as it was before. So yeah. But anyway, so for a while there, if my husband had to travel for whenever he traveled to Philadelphia for work, on the plane he would bring back like 6 cheesesteaks all wrapped up. And and then 9/11 came. And they didn't let
Can't do that. Yeah. Oh man, well the times have changed, but I'm so glad for the time that we've been able to spend here together.
Yeah, and
thank you.
And what you're doing too, I mean, it's just so close to my heart because, people have to take responsibility for their own financial independence, and we have to. Those of us who have been able to do that, or have found ways to navigate in often creative and unusual ways or disruptive ways, like this disruptor economy kind of thing of Airbnb, we need to share that with other people. We need to say there is a way